Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Vibe with Kai podcast. It's your boy Kai, and today I'm sitting here with my good friend, and I made sure I didn't want to mess up your name. Chelsie Maccarone, not macaroni,
Well,
macaroon.
correct.
I wanted to make sure I didn't mess it up. I didn't want to say macaroni. I want to make sure I say it right.
Well, in order not to be made fun of in like grade school, my husband just said, "Oh, I'm macaroni," so that people wouldn't make fun of him. So, he introduces us as macaronis, but
Right, right. It's
it's
okay.
macaron.
My legal name is Keenan. And so when I was growing up, everybody would be like, "Hey Keenan, where's Kel?" I would get that every single day. Every day. It was like insane. And I was like, oh my God, can you please stop? Can you please stop? But here we are. Here we are with our awesome names. My friends, I'm sitting here with Chelsie Maccarone, who is the founder and you're the founder of this, right? Healthy Minds and More Counseling Services,
Yes.
and you're a therapist. And you pitched to me this idea that I loved, that I wanted to run with. You said, what wouldn't it be awesome if like people just submitted questions about therapy and just have a therapist answer those questions? Because a lot of times people might have questions that they either don't have the means to find out the answer to, or they are afraid to ask them. So people can submit their questions anonymously, and that's what we did. So a couple weeks leading up into this interview, I asked all of the people that I follow that follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter and LinkedIn. If you could ask a therapist any question, what would that question be? And we got so many questions, so
I'm
much
sure.
so that Chelsie, we might have to do a part two,
Yeah.
like legitimately, because we got a lot. So I hope you're not sick of my face.
No, I'm down for it. I think that this is
Okay.
a great platform and you do a great job about raising
Oh,
awareness and erasing the stigma. And I really believe in the work that you do. So,
well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. But this is not about me, Chelsie. This is about you and your knowledge and your nice try though. This is about you, your knowledge, your insight. When you pitched to me this idea, I was like, oh hell yeah, we need to do this because I always say to people, I'm not a mental health professional, nor do I pretend to be one. I don't want to pretend to be one. But I what I love to do is lend my platform to the people that know what they're talking about, that have this education, that have this insight and knowledge that I could never have. And I wanted to lend my platform to people like you to spread that knowledge and to spread that insight. And so we were like, okay, let's cover a bunch of different topics today. So thank you for pitching this idea, and thank you for taking time out of your day to sit and chat with me. I want to tell people about you because I love this. I'm going to read a little bit of your bio.
uh-oh.
So I'm going to read it straight from your website because it's so perfectly written. So I just want to read it directly from your website. It's great. I, as in you, have always believed in balance. I live that in my personal life to the best of my ability. I've been blessed to have the opportunity to allow this philosophy to spill into my profession. I am of the belief that with a healthy lifestyle, you can attain peace and happiness. I take fitness and nutrition to fuel my healthy body, and use therapy and counseling to fuel a healthy mind. I began this journey with multiple challenges in life when multiple challenges in life were thrown my way. Starting as a child in the performing and visual arts, like me, set the creative foundation in my heart. Working with children as a teen and onward highlighted my desire to help children and their families. As I took my journey through college and graduate school, I realized I had an ear for listening. Through my personal journey, I realized the benefits of fitness and nutrition and how they help me through difficult times in my life. These interests are what brought me to Healthy Minds and More Counseling Services, bringing balance and peace to our lives. And if you want Chelsea's full story, we did an interview. When was this? Last month?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was last month, and we talked all about this. So I'm going to make sure I include a link to that, so people that want to get like the full backstory about you there. But in the meantime, Chelsie, if you don't mind, before we get into these questions, tell us a little bit about you, about what you do every single day, and why you pitch this topic.
Oh man. Okay, so about me in regards to like the balance and that stuff.
Yeah, anything, anything,
Yeah.
anything, anything that you want.
So I kind of have like grown into like dubbing myself this like holistic therapist and like
Hmm.
holistic health. So much so that I work with a holistic healer as well personally.
Hmm.
Um, she does like craniosacral therapy and chiropractic care, acupuncture, hypnotherapy. Like she does all this kind of stuff. And I love her work too. So my local clients, I do also refer to her if it is appropriate. Because I think that sometimes in medicine and the United States, like we've kind of shied away from more of that holistic care, like what's really going on underneath the surface.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I've kind of gotten into this like holistic health. I go to the gym, I do yoga. I'm really conscientious of my diet and what I'm eating.
Hmm.
Not to the point where it stresses me out, because I think sometimes, when we go down that road, we can get a little stressed out. But I try and just keep things very balanced and fueling my body, fueling my soul, and things like that in a healthy way. And so that being said, I kind of believe in like having a balanced mind, body, and spirit. So when working with clients, a lot of times I'll ask them, well, what are you eating? How is your
Hmm.
sleep? What's your spiritual practice? It's not about having a specific religion, but having some kind of faith in something greater than you.
Right.
And
You
so I
definitely
talk
don't want
about
the those first two questions, like what are you eating and how you sleeping? You definitely do not want me to answer those questions right now. Like we're just going to pretend that you did not ask me those questions because
that's
you do
okay.
not want to hear that answer.
That's okay. That's okay. So that all that means is you're out of alignment right now.
It's very true. And I had therapy. I have therapy every other Monday, and that was one of the things that we actually talked about. When it comes to like my sleeping schedule, not necessarily my eating side, but 100% my sleeping schedule and how I go about doing that. So I'm glad you brought that up for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, I say these things not to necessarily stress people out or like be like, oh, I'm doing it wrong.
Right.
It's just you might temporarily be out of alignment. So, for example, one of the journeys I'm on right now is becoming a perinatal certified therapist.
Mm.
I took a class, waiting to take the exam, whatever. But also, I'm a new mom too, and your sleep is what I have sleep.
Sleep. I don't know what
Um,
this sleep thing is. It sounds fun. I gotta, my friends told me all about it. I gotta try it out one day.
right. And so, I think being someone who was so balanced and whatnot, that was kind of difficult for me to be out of
Hmm.
alignment with, and regaining the sinking with that. But anyway, so yeah, so that kind of holistic journey. And so like I also try and practice what I preach. So, I might not be currently in therapy, but I've had a therapist. I plan on having a
Mm.
therapist, during different transition stages. And I believe, and sorry, therapists out there, if you don't like what I have to say yet, but if your therapist doesn't have a therapist or has never had a therapist, get a new therapist.
That's that's really interesting because I'm not gonna lie, it's always been in my mind. I'm like, man, I wonder if my therapist has a therapist, and if so, does my therapist like be like, yo, okay, this guy that I have every Monday at 6 o'clock, good lord, he's working through a lot and he's projecting right now.
I think that's super cute. No, when we go to our therapist, we talk about ourselves.
That's fair. That's fair. it's
Yeah.
it's so that's the kind of stuff that I think about sometimes. I also think about like because I make mental health content and I have like therapists that contact me and they'll be like, hey, I didn't know who you were, but my one of my patients, a bunch of my patients keep showing me your videos. I wanted to reach out and I was like, oh my God. And I told my therapist on Monday, I was like, I apologize in advance if at any point any of your other patients use me as an example for whatever you're working on with them. If they happen to bring up like an Instagram reel that I did,
Oh,
and they're like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And then my therapist is like, oh my God, if they only knew.
that's great. I love that. That's so cute.
Yeah.
That's
No, I
awesome.
love I love. Do you talk to a lot of other therapists like about stuff like this? Like as in like not necessarily from a therapeutic standpoint, but other therapists in regards to like just talking about like that process of the importance of a therapist having therapy, like getting therapy.
Times. I think when I did agency work more so, being
Hmm.
in a group practice, of being the owner of a group practice, it's kind of just us,
Yeah.
it's kind of isolated. But yeah, I mean, I check in with my therapist that I supervise. I'm also a qualified supervisor for interns.
Hmm.
I talk to the therapist that I supervise and make sure that they're working through their sticking points. Because think it's really important. There's this thing called transference in our field.
Mm,
And they also say countertransference, but transference is transference. So whether it's client onto therapist or therapist onto client. And when we're experiencing transference as a therapist onto our clients, it's really important we work through some of that stuff. And
mhm,
so for those of you who don't know what that is, it's just basically like, oh, I have mom issues and now I'm projecting them onto my client.
mm.
Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
or if we're feeling frustrated with a client, there's usually a reason, like in a personal reason. It's
Sure.
usually not the client, it has nothing to do with
Right.
them. It's all about us.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I encourage my therapists that I work with to work through their stuff
Right.
and
Right.
have a therapist to do that, or at least in some kind of supervisory situation, even though I'm not their therapist, but I can maybe guide them through some things.
Sure, that makes sense. And I love, I'm really thankful that you're giving this background on everything, because this is kind of like laying the groundwork for the questions that we're going to be answering. So like those were some of the questions that I had personally. And like I said, we got tons of questions that came through, and I wish we had time to get through all of them, but we're not. So we're definitely going to have to do a part two to this. But I want to dive right into this. So the first question is from Ellie from New York City. And she wrote, "How do I know if therapy is right for me?"
So, all right. So I'm going to preface with, before we get into too many more, I'm giving very general answers, right?
Hmm.
Because you're not the person asking questions, not sitting right in front of me, so I can't dive in. But how do you know if therapy is right for you? I'm just going to say it's right for everybody. We all are going through transitions. We all are going through something. There's a difference between good mental health and mental illness. So just
Mm-hmm.
because you don't necessarily have mental illness doesn't mean that therapy is not right for you. So if you're sitting there going, I wonder if I need therapy, go to therapy. There's
It's
something
really,
on your mind that you're like,
yeah.
right? So even if it's something that feels trivial, like, oh, I should be
Hmm.
able to work this out on my own, or oh, talk to my mom about it. I think still, even having a therapist, they're not biased. They're not going to tell you
Mm,
what you want to hear. They're not going to tell you something that's in their own interest. They're going to tell you something that's unbiased. They're going to, help you process it and find out your inner needs, wants, desires, that kind of stuff. So even if it's something that's not like serious, like symptomatic, I still say go, like you can
yeah.
feel so much lighter coming out of even just like one or two sessions if it's something super simple, like, oh, I'm going through this thing at work and I just need to process it, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to also realize that in addition to what you're saying, even if you don't think that you need it per se, I feel like therapy finds a way to just help you discover things about yourself and about your thoughts and how you process things, and you end up discovering things that you didn't even know existed, like within you, and acknowledging things that you think don't matter, but come to find out you've been suppressing them and not processing them because for a variety of reasons, but you're not processing them, and therapy can help that, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can even speak like on my own personal therapeutic journey. Like therapy for me has been so validating,
Mm-hmm.
whatever insecurities you're experiencing, whatever second guessing, imposter syndrome, whatever's going on, a therapist can be so validating because there's this thing that we call unconditional positive regard that we give to our clients. And we
Mm-hmm.
don't get that from our friends. We don't get that from our boss. We don't get that from our partners, from our siblings, from whatever. But we get that from a therapist. And
Yeah.
just that alone, if you have a good, solid therapeutic relationship, that can just be so warming of your heart. So yeah, I'm an advocate for therapy. I'm a
Yeah.
therapist.
I love it. I love it. This next question is from Daisy. Daisy says, "What can I expect from therapy?"
Okay, so there's the like
You expect everything to be fixed, right? Everything's on the first session. You're gonna walk in, you're gonna talk for about 15 minutes, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, that's what I'm doing wrong," and then you're done. That's it, right? That's all you got to do. One
No,
stop shop.
no. I was actually going to go through like kind of like the format of therapy.
Yeah,
'Cause
please.
if you've never been in therapy before, again, you don't really know what to expect. Then the first intake session, it sucks. It's like super dry. It's like, it's called your biopsychosocial, literally, like your biography. Like, let me hear all about your history. And it feels dry and it feels really invasive. And you're vulnerable and you don't know this person and they're asking you about your trauma history and
Right.
they're asking you about your substance misuse and have you ever had suicidal thoughts and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah.
So your first session or two is really your therapist asking you a lot of questions. We call that like the assessment stage. Then we start moving and shifting into what we call the treatment planning stage. This is where you set up your goals for therapy. Once you establish your goals for therapy, that's your intervention stage. That's where it's like, oh, therapist is going to work her mojo.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Usually it's you doing a lot of homework.
Right.
And then in the field, they call it the termination stage. And I hate that in saying
You
it
said
sounds so
termination stage.
that's our field. Like that's like what they teach us in school. I call it graduation. It's
Mhm.
graduation therapy because termination sounds so gross.
I know. It sounds so like
Clinical. Mhm.
yes.
It's not fun. So yeah, so then you graduate. And so that's kind of like what to expect as far as the format of therapy.
Mhm.
Um, as far as like what to expect for your personal journey, I don't know. I don't know why you're seeking therapy. So everybody's
Right, right.
journey.
It's gonna differ for each person, and you'll kind of go through that. But generally speaking, like the way you laid it out, I mean, it's pretty much what it is. And it seems like it goes without saying, but like a lot of people don't know that. Like I remember the first time that I went into therapy, I thought the same thing. Like the first, like during that intake session, and I'm like, this person, like I feel like just learned my name 3 minutes ago, and now I'm telling them all about my childhood trauma.
Yeah,
you
you're like
know?
you go from like hello, hi, how are you to third base like in
Yes.
seconds.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like it's wasting no time because you only get like 45, 50, at least in my session, you got 45, 50 minutes to get through a lot of your life,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
and all of that. So that's
And
really,
it's so
yeah.
vulnerable. You're like, did I get an
Mhm.
STD from that? Like, what just
Right,
happened?
right. It's like you have to have a cigarette afterwards and just like, oh man, what
Yeah,
happened? I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
This next
So,
question is from
okay.
Ava. Um, uh, how will this might be another general question, but how will therapy help me? I think you kind of answered that already in the beginning. So how will therapy help me? There's a number of ways. I guess it just depends on what you're there for and what you go through the steps. Charlie wants to know, what should I look for when choosing a therapist?
I think this is such a great question. I mean, they're all great questions, but so what to look for? I think that's such a personal thing, right? You
Hmm.
want to feel comfortable and you want to feel like you have trust in this person. You want to feel like you could bare your soul and you would be completely safe.
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
really kind of just like a feeling. And you might not get it on the first session, right? You might just kind of have like this, I feel uncomfortable, but
Hmm.
I feel like I can talk to this person. It's easy to talk to this
Hmm.
person. But I might be uncomfortable in this chair, in this space. I think also a good thing to look for in a therapist is obviously like credentialing. You want to make sure that they're not a life coach and that they are like either a licensed or on track to be licensed
Hmm.
clinical worker. Not to bash life coaches out there, but life coaches are not psychotherapy, right? You have a
Hmm.
psychotherapist, which is very different from a life coach. And I love life coaching. I think it's great. But if you're looking for therapy for mental illness and things like that, then yeah, you definitely want to make sure that they're
Right.
licensed, and that they're licensed in the state that you live in.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And can you also, I mean, I believe this to be true, but I want to hear your thoughts on this. You're not always gonna click with like your therapist, especially your first one, and so it's not uncommon to go to therapy, not click, and then have to maybe try somebody else, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I That's actually one of the talking points I always touch on my very first session. If for whatever reason you're feeling like you're not getting something out of this, talk to me about it because there's a couple of things that can happen. I might be using the wrong kind of intervention for you.
Mm,
So, like an example, I went to therapy when I was in college and I was overwhelmed with schoolwork, and the therapist gave me CBT paperwork like homework.
mm.
And I'm
So
like, I don't
like,
want
which
to
is an
write.
awful idea when you're in college with all, yeah.
Correct. I'm like, I don't want to do your worksheets. I could barely do my schoolwork. So, right. So if I talked to her about it, which I didn't, but if I did, she might be like, oh, my bad. Maybe I should use a different intervention.
Right,
Um,
right.
so I always say, at first, just talk to your therapist about it because it might actually be something within you that they can
Hmm.
help unearth. Or it might just be a little tweak that they need to make with their intervention or kind of how they're going about treatment. And if it continues after like 3 or 4, 5 sessions, then maybe it's time to find a new therapist.
Right, right. I love this next question. I think it's great. This is from Sophia. How long does it typically take to see results from therapy?
Mm. So it depends on the client, right?
Hmm.
Patient, client, whatever you want to call. But
Hmm.
it depends on the person because some people they can find relief in the first session, right? Because for whatever multitude of reasons, and some people they're resistant to change, or they're just not seeing it, or there's a huge trauma history. There might be very many different components. Maybe it's couples counseling, and you're not necessarily seeing something right away. So that's also a very like personal journey, and it depends
Hmm.
on like what you're going for, if you need medication and if you're medication compliant, and like all like there's so many variables. But I've had some clients where literally they came to me for like 2 or 3 sessions and they were like, okay, thank you. I got
I got
everything
what
I
I
needed.
needed. All
I'm
right, bye.
good. Yeah.
Right.
So it just depends, what you're
Yeah.
coming for and how responsive you are to treatment.
Right, right. And you'll notice I tried to put these questions kind of like in I don't want to say chronological order, but kind of like in order in which like we kind of start from like the initial, okay, should I go to therapy, into okay, what happens when I'm there? When should I expect results? So that's why I'm kind of like going in this way. But I'm going to go take a step back for a section and talk about the first session for a second, because I like this question too. It's from Grace. And they state, is there anything special I should do to prepare for my first session with a therapist?
Ooh, so not necessarily anything special, but I definitely think being prepared if you are anxious about therapy and you need to
Hmm.
do like a couple of deep breaths before it to kind of ground and center. I think also going into it with an open heart and an open mind, be open to receive, just kind of just being really, really open to the experience, which sometimes anxiety and nerves can kind of close us off.
Hmm.
So I'm big when I used to do in-person therapy, I'm big on body language. So like sometimes I would have my clients, put their feet, both flat on the ground and like sit with their arms
Hmm.
uncrossed, just so that you're open. If you're open body language, you're open to usually receive a little bit more too.
Right, right. Um, I, I I've learned a lot recently in regards to couples therapy, and like how many people go to like as a couple. But there was this one question that was sent in from Lila. She states, can couples counseling, and it's kind of worded weird here, so let me know if it comes off as weird, but can couples counseling be helpful even when only one person is in treatment? Does that kind of make, I don't know if that makes
It does make
sense.
sense.
It does.
So
Hmm.
when it's basically when one half of the couple is in therapy for
Hmm.
couples counseling is what it sounds like.
Okay, yeah, because I
So
figure, okay, is it couples counseling if both people aren't in it? But I'm also dumb, so like correct
Well,
me,
so
please.
so think about this, Kai. If you're in a couple
Yeah.
and you guys book a couple session and one of you shows up and the other is mad and doesn't go,
Mm.
it's still couples. It's still
Hmm.
couples work.
Hmm.
Um, I find in my experience that if both sides of the couple aren't regularly attending couples therapy, um, it usually isn't going to have a very happy outcome.
Right.
But it also depends on why the couple's going to therapy,
Hmm.
because sometimes couples go because there is an identified patient, like what we call. So, like for example, maybe the marriage is decent or the relationship is decent, but one half of the couple is struggling with substance abuse,
Mm.
and so that person who's actively in addiction isn't going to couples therapy, but the one who's sober is,
Right.
then they're going and they're trying to get support and all that kind of stuff. So it just really depends on the story and what's going on with the couple. But I find it's most beneficial if both half of the couple is attending couples therapy.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I feel like if when one person is committed to trying to make something better and the other isn't, then I'm not saying it's bound to fail, but like the chances of it not working out are probably a little bit higher than normal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do some of that kind of work too. Like, for example, if one half of the couple is going, letting
Hmm.
go of trying to change the other half and like doing your own work,
Right.
that can then, but then it becomes individual therapy at that point.
Right. Right. Exactly. Um, this question is from Isaiah. No, lies, because you already answered that one. This is from Layla. This one's kind of a two-parter, so I don't know if you can answer it in with one answer, but I'll throw them both out there. Layla states, are there any dangers associated with psychotherapy or psychiatric medications that I should know about before starting treatment?
Yes, so I actually took notes on this question
Hmm.
because there are risks with psychotherapy. But as far as like medication, I'm just gonna throw out there
Hmm.
that I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist. So any of the risks with any medication, there are risks, right? So I would
Hmm.
just consult with your prescribing doctor as far as like the medication goes.
Hmm.
Because I mean, anytime you put something in your body, whether it be food or medication, whatever, it's gonna obviously affect you in some
Right.
way. But the common risks associated with psychotherapy, talk therapy, um, the some clients, and this can be common, can develop strong feelings for their therapists, especially
Mm,
after like a long period of time in therapy. And sometimes it can feel uncomfortable or confusing. And so it's really important to explore that and express that to your therapist so that you guys
mm,
can work through some of that stuff. Your therapist is experienced to handle that. And that's that transference stuff that we were talking about.
right, right.
But as the client, you could be like, oh my God, why am I having these feelings, these strong feelings towards my therapist? They could be good or bad. Oh, I hate my
Hmm.
therapist, or oh my God, I think I'm falling in love with my therapist, or anything in between.
Has that
Um,
happened to you before?
I haven't had the love one. I've had
Hmm.
clients like scream in my face, fuck you, I hate you.
Oh no, really?
I should also preface that I used to work in a drug treatment program.
Fair enough. Hmm.
So when you're coming off
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
substances, you're angry.
Right,
And that's
right.
not me. That's their own hurt and their own pain
Hmm.
coming out.
Right,
And no,
right.
I help love them and
Hmm.
help them through that. It's not about me.
Hmm. Right, right.
But strong feelings nonetheless.
Yeah, yeah. The feelings are strong.
Yeah. Another thing is therapy can complicate your life
Mm,
because it's about making changes, right? And looking at yourself differently. And usually it's improvements, right? But that can change how you live. That can change how you feel about certain relationships. Creating healthy boundaries with people sometimes means they're no longer in your life at the same capacity as they were. And that's an adjustment that can be difficult. So your therapist can help you like work through some of that stuff. Another risk, which is kind of obvious, but maybe not so obvious, therapy is not free usually. And
mm,
so, depending on your financial situation, that can be a burden, right? Um, some people, choose to go the insurance route. Some people choose to go the cash pay route, but it's still a burden, right? Um, Another risk is if you are going the insurance route, insurance companies have the right to ask about your treatment.
mm.
So they ask about your counseling, they ask about your counseling experience to deem if it's necessary or not medically necessary.
Wow.
So when talking about confidentiality, it's confidential to a point because insurance companies
Hmm.
are digging into if you are going through insurance, your therapist is required to give you a diagnosis. So let's say you're going for mental health. Oh, I'm having an issue with work and I'm just stressed out because I have a jerk boss. And you go through your insurance, you have to have a diagnosis. So your therapist is going to
Wow.
diagnose you with something.
So you're saying jerk boss is not an official diagnosis recognized by society? No, it's not. Okay. All right. I'm gonna have to
Mhm.
rescind one of my diagnosis.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I
Yeah.
love my boss.
So,
BJ, if you're listening, BJ, if you're listening, I love you, buddy.
um, yeah. So those are some of them, some of my notes. There's a
Right.
few more, but yeah, so I mean, there are some risks,
Yeah.
some seem benign, depending on how quiet you are about, how close you hold your cards to your chest will
Right.
determine how you feel about using your insurance or not.
Right. Right. No, I love that. Thank you for like being so like well spoken about that, because I know that that's a question that people like do have like legitimately have about like this entire process that you may not think of like in the moment, but like when you're coming down to the point where you're going to discuss possibly going to therapy, that is something that will just like pop up in your brain, like, okay, what are the cons or potential cons or dangers of this, and so on and so forth. And while we're stopped here in between questions, I do want to say to anybody that's listening or watching right now, if you're enjoying this interview that I'm doing with my wonderful friend Chelsie here, there's plenty more things just like this, where I'm interviewing mental health professionals from all over the globe. I always want to lend my platform to people that know what they're talking about. And so I'm always interviewing people like Chelsie, the therapists, mental health professionals that are able to provide a knowledge and an insight that I can't provide, and stuff that may not even be easily found on the internet. So if you're interested in more like this, click on the link within the description of this video, of this podcast, and you're going to see a link to Patreon, where you can get so many interviews that I've done with mental health professionals. It's only $1 per month. That's it, $1 per month. And you get access to all of those interviews that I've done. Plus, you get a sneak peek behind the scenes look at my life, all the stuff that I don't put out publicly, I put up in there. I talk personal stuff in there because that's my safe space. So if you're interested in stuff like that, go subscribe to the Vibe with Kai Patreon. It's only $1 per month. Okay, I had to do the plug.
Do a plug.
I had to do the commercial.
It's okay.
I'm also practicing for when I get sponsored by like McDonald's or something like that. Like we just answered all of these questions about like traumatic traumatic childhoods, and I'll switch to, speaking of traumatic childhoods, McDonald's new kids meal is available today. I gotta work on my
Traumatic
segues.
childhood. Back when McDonald's had the playpens.
Yeah, they still do. They still have the playpens. It's still
Not there.
there. I know. Trump, like, go there to get triggered. That's going to be my McDonald's. If you're listening,
Some
hire me as your
exposure therapy.
spokesperson. Like, because I will find a segue. I will make it work. Dang it! Oh my god, that's really funny. This next question actually has to deal with insurance. And then we were talking about insurance, so I would it's perfect that it leads into this. This is from Benjamin. Will my insurance cover mental health care, and how do I find out what's covered by my plan, and how much will it cost me in co-payments, co-insurance, or deductible amounts that must be met before coverage begins, etc.?
So I have a love-hate relationship with this question. Um, I love it because it's a thorough, great question. I hate it because insurance is a pain in the butt. You have to call your insurance company and sit on
Yeah.
hold and be in voicemail jail, and operator, customer service representative, a person. You're gonna have to do it. It sucks, but maybe they have an interweb thing.
Yeah, like hopefully like on the website maybe it'll have like more information and
Yeah, I don't use
stuff.
insurance for my therapist.
There, well, I did a video on this because there's a lot of therapists that don't work with insurance companies because of how difficult that process can be, and expensive. Because if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but when a client comes in and they're working with the therapist and insurance, the insurance obviously takes a cut of what's being paid, right? So like the therapist doesn't really see all of that money that comes through.
Correct. So
Mm-hmm.
I, as a therapist, I take insurance for my clients,
Mm-hmm.
but when I go see a therapist, I don't use my
Mm-hmm.
insurance.
Okay, correct.
Um,
I don't use insurance for my therapist either.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so the insurance companies, depending on which one it is, makes you jump through a certain number of hoops.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if you want, I can talk about what
Yeah,
that's like for
go
us
right
as
on ahead.
therapists.
Absolutely.
So if you want to be paneled with an insurance company, you have to like apply. And if you apply to them directly, you have to like advocate for yourself directly with an insurance company. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what that process is like, but I've always been talked out of it. And the other way to do it is using a company, a credentialing company. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, they have the relationships with all the insurance companies, and you basically sign over everything in blood and promise your
Mm-hmm.
firstborn. And then they take a percentage of your monthly income every month, to cover the costs of getting you paneled with all these insurance companies. So like it's like 3% or 4%,
Hmm.
like depending on your contract. That's one way. Other companies, they have you pay upfront, like a flat fee, like I don't know, $1,500, whatever.
Hmm.
And they do all the heavy lifting and negotiate contract reimbursement prices. And this is what's so fun, is it depends on where you're located as a therapist and how saturated the market is. So the more
Interesting.
saturated it is with clinicians, the less your reimbursement rate is. But if it's a high needs location, the higher your reimbursement rate is.
Interesting. So if you're saying that if it's like a place like New York City, it'll like the reimbursement rate will be higher than like Nowheresville, Nebraska, or vice
Well,
versa.
it depends. It depends on how many therapists there are in your specialty. So like
Right.
if there's like one of you or 10 of you, you're gonna have a higher reimbursement rate than if there's
Right.
like 5,000 of you in
Hmm.
one county.
So you're saying that mental health has found a way to be supply and demand? Holy shit. Really?
And there might be
How
some
did
people
how
that
did capitalism work into
I don't know, but there might be some people that'll
ADHD?
be like, oh my God, she's so wrong. That's not how it is. I'm going through the credentialing process now. That's how it is.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I was using other companies and I'm not going to like
Yeah.
put their names out here, but I was
Hmm.
using other companies that do it a different way where you become a 1099 and work for them.
Hmm.
And we have provider numbers, whatever. Anyway, they use their provider number. So you're not using your own provider number, but they take care of all the insurance stuff for you. And that's how I was doing it. But I'm coming
Right.
out of that because I want to use my own NPI number, my own provider number, and I don't want to have to be dependent on those companies.
This sounds stressful. Just listening to you describe this, I grew like 17 gray hairs on
I knew
my
that already.
face. Like just listening to you explain this, I'm already like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'll stick with
So
talking to people on a
I'm also
microphone.
like a big support of other therapists who are going
Yeah.
through this right
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
Mhm.
That's great, and I hope other therapists might actually be listening to this as well, and hopefully feeling validated with this this whole process, because like this is something that's happening all over the United States.
It's really difficult. So, I mean, if you're a therapist, you guys can reach out to me. I'll talk to you, whatever, email me. Anyway, but it is tough because here's the thing, like you struggle with, okay, if I'm paneled, I get more referrals, right? If I'm
Hmm.
paneled, the insurance companies are going to send me clients and funnel clients and I'll be able to pay my bills and eat. But if you're like, but I don't want to go through that headache, and I just want to do cash and take cash only, then it's like, well, what's the right price,
Hmm.
right? Because you
Hmm.
don't want to price yourself out and like not be accessible to other people, like,
Right.
to clients. And then, then you're like, oh, now I have no clients and I can't eat. So it's like, what way do I go? And so
Hmm.
some therapists I know, they kind of do a blend, like they take only so many insurance clients and like mainly cash pay or whatever.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a balancing act. It really is.
Good Lord. No, I'll stick with marketing and making TikTok videos. I don't have to deal with anything else. This next question is from, let's say, Skylar, and she states, could something that happened to me when I was young still be causing problems for me now as an adult, even though I don't really remember it happening or feel like it has any bearing on my current life at all?
I mean, if you feel like it is, then it is, right?
Hmm.
I fully believe that you are the expert of your own experience. And if you're feeling like, okay, even though I don't really remember this, I feel like it's impacting me now, then it
Hmm.
is, right? And so it's just now unearthing how and why and what about it, right?
Hmm. Could
Um,
it subliminally affect you? Like,
why
could
not?
it like even without you realizing that it was something traumatic, like could it still affect you in some way? If
Yeah,
you're
why not?
not like really thinking about it, I guess in the forefront of your brain, but it's there, it happened.
Yeah, why not?
Hmm. That makes sense.
I
Okay,
mean,
easy
so
enough.
when you talk about, so here's an example. When you talk
Hmm.
about trauma is generational,
Mm,
that's not something that even happened directly to you. It happened to your
right.
grandparents, great grandparents, whatever,
It's a
but
great
it's a
point.
generational trauma.
That's a great point. Look at you. This is why. This is exactly why I'm like, oh, Chelsea's the perfect person for this, because you're just coming in
But
ready to drop some
I
bombs,
like simplified
drop
it.
the
I was like,
mic.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, wait, he doesn't know why yes. Okay, let me give you an example as to why yes.
Yes, remember, I know absolutely nothing. I know absolutely nothing at all. Um, this next question is from Nevea. Is there a particular mindset or attitude that might make the healing process easier or more effective over time when working with frustration, grief, guilt, shame, and other difficult emotions that come during therapy sessions? If so, what is it?
Okay, so I love the giggle, right? I love this question. So
Hmm.
I feel like the most people would say no, there's not, but I'm going to say
Hmm.
yes, there is.
Okay.
And I'm going to say it's being open. It's
Mm.
open to receive, open to looking in the mirror and seeing
Hmm.
what your personal responsibility is to these difficult feelings. And then secondly, I'm going to say lean in, right? When we're feeling an uncomfortable emotion, our first initial response is to avoid, pull away, pull back. I don't
Right.
want to feel it, numb, zone out on TikTok, zone out with the alcohol bottle, pop a
Right.
pill, have sex, whatever. Like we
Hmm.
want to numb, I don't want to feel this, right? Right? Lean into the difficult emotion, get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. When we
Mm.
lean in, think about a pulled muscle or sore muscle. You're going to the gym, you're lifting weights, and
Oh, you
oh
can
man,
thanks. I'm
yeah,
kidding.
right.
I'm kidding.
But you're doing all that, and the lactic acid is there, and your muscles are sore, right?
Hmm.
And if you don't do anything, it's going to take longer for them to repair. If you foam roll, if you stretch, if you lean into it, do some yoga, whatever, they heal.
Hmm.
It hurts while you're doing it, but they heal quicker.
Mm.
Same with emotions,
I
right?
love it. I love when we use physical things to to help people understand the mental side of things, because I feel like we accept physical injuries but we don't accept mental, like illnesses or mental disorders the same way. And like it kind of like takes a back burner, and like I always love using, you know like a physical, like something physical, like a broken arm, to describe something from a mental health standpoint. And it seems to help people understand that like it's just as important, if not more important, to take care of your mind,
Yeah.
mentally, than it is to take care, like obviously we want to take care of each other physically, our physical bodies, but our mental state goes a long way, and I feel like people just don't view it that way.
Well, us as a society, I can't speak for other societies, but us as a society, we are reactive,
Mm,
not proactive, right? We don't take caution, like do caution, like to prevent. We're not preventative people.
mhm,
It's like, oh, now that it hurts, let me go to the doctor.
mm,
Not,
mhm,
let me do the things to prevent it from hurting, like as we age, for example, right? We need to have balance and flexibility and strength.
mhm.
But we don't do that. We wait until we
Right.
need the hip replacement to go to a physical therapist. Like,
Right.
but we should be doing that all along so that we prevent injury, so that we don't break our hips when we're older, so that we don't fall and lose our balance when we're older. Because falls are actually like one of the biggest declines in the elderly.
Wow. Is that why
Mhm.
they have like those what do you call it, life alert things, like they can wear around their neck, so like when they fall, they just like does I don't know if it censors that they fell, but like they could push a button. I just
Yeah,
remember the commercial of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
I
old
mean,
people
and
falling.
and yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, right? Like they fall and they can't
Hmm.
heal and then they die with the
That was
elderly.
grim. That
Yeah,
was
but that happens.
but it's the factual, no lies detected.
No, I mean it happened to my husband's grandmother. She fell, broke her hip, and couldn't recover, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's some scary stuff.
But
um
so
I-
so that going to say prevent
yeah,
it, right?
right. I love this question, because like your answer can go any number of ways. Theoretically speaking, is there anything wrong with talking negatively about myself while sitting down with a counselor? For example, I'm not good enough.
Okay, so now we're putting a moral compass on your own
Mm,
internal thoughts.
mm,
So I would like to, if this was my client, explore that.
mhm,
But the short version, since this is a Q&A, no, there's nothing wrong with it. However, it's unhelpful.
mm.
Instead of I'm not enough, shift it. I don't feel enough.
Ooh. Ooh, that was good. I like that. I feel like I should put that on a t-shirt. That was a good one.
It's yours, Kai.
Yes, I'm gonna of course come on, I gotta monetize, I gotta
That's
make that
fine. I'm
dough.
gonna branch into merch soon too.
There's
Listen, we
been a
just
couple
had
of
the
things
whole
you've said
conversation
today.
about how insurance is. I
I
need to get
know.
merch. Let's go.
There's been a couple of things you said today that I'm like, I could put that on a t-shirt and make some money, you know?
So since you did a plug, I'm gonna do a plug.
Yeah, please
I
do.
already have some merch.
Look at that. Mental health helper. What's the title? Kick
Kick anxiety to
anxiety
the
to the
curb.
curb, and tell people how they can get that.
It's on Amazon. You can search mental health helper. You can search kick anxiety to the curb. It's a workbook. It's not just like a book. Like there's like little journal section. There's like little prompts. There's learn about your anxiety.
So this is what I'll do. I'm gonna include a link to that book. I didn't know. I didn't know this. I wish I would have known this because I would have
You
worked
didn't
it
know
into
that?
my little
It's
plugs.
in my signature, my email.
You know what? You are correct. So I will 100% add. I'll add that link into the description
Oh,
of this episode. That way, people can click on it and be like, I want that book. They're
yeah.
British. Everybody
Yeah, I'm
listening is
gonna do a
British
whole
now.
Kick It series. It'll be great.
Yes, I love it. This is perfect. So a couple more. Like we're gonna have to do a part two, like
That's
at some
fine.
point in the future.
I'm so
Like
excited.
I
Let's do
know,
it
because
next
like
week. I don't care.
I know
Let's go.
there's like so many. Oh my goodness, there's so many great questions that people have. So we'll do a couple more. Um, okay. So this is from bro. Let's go with the one from okay, I'm gonna go with actually Violet because I'm curious what your answer to this will be. What happens if things, quote, go wrong during the course of our sessions together? What are some of the ways we could handle this sort of situation? I'm not sure what they mean by go wrong, but like, but I'm curious, like, how, I don't know what go wrong means, but
I don't know what go wrong means
yeah.
either. So I'm going to kind of like tackle this lightly.
Hmm.
Assuming it's not an ethical dilemma. For
Hmm.
example, your therapist isn't coming on to you or touching you
Right,
inappropriately, like things
right.
like that. But go wrong mean you're uncomfortable
Hmm.
emotionally, or you feel like you're not getting help, or things
Right.
just kind of aren't sitting well with you. That's how I'm going to go about answering this question. Talk to your therapist about it.
Hmm.
Tell them I feel stuck. I feel like we're not getting anything out of this. If they
Right.
get defensive, if they get upset, if they whatever, find a new therapist.
It just
That's
means
it.
that it's not meant to be anyway. So it's probably a good thing that you're that you're
Right.
leaving.
Right.
I
Yeah.
want to squeeze this one in here too because I like it. Should group settings always be considered before individual counseling options?
Ooh, there's your all or nothing thinking. Always, never.
I didn't write the question. That
I
one
know
was
you
from
didn't. I
Erica
know you
with the
didn't. I'm just
I
responding to
know.
the
You
question.
can't yell at me, dang it.
I'm not yelling. So what was the question? Should group therapy always?
Yeah, should group settings always be considered before individual counseling options?
No, I don't know.
Do you see a
I
benefit to group therapy?
Yeah, so I will say group therapy is really, 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 really beneficial for people who are
Hmm.
suffering with drug addiction, drug and alcohol addiction.
Okay. Hmm.
And I also find group therapy to be okay with teens. It's difficult for the therapist, but I feel like for teens to have like other teens there can
Hmm.
kind of be helpful, but it's tricky to navigate as the therapist.
Right, right.
Yeah.
You're a rock star, Chelsea. I really do like you took these questions and you're like, I got it from here, Kai. Cool, thanks. And like you just like
Sorry.
you kicked ass. No, this is great. No, this is perfect. That because I told you I don't know jack shit. So like I really do like appreciate you like taking time out of your day, your night to sit here and answer these questions that people send in. And to anybody listening right now, I'm going to keep on my website. I'm going to keep the page open so all of you can continue to just ask questions, and I will continue to compile them. And then, Chelsea, you and I will we'll just continue to sit together and just, answer these questions. And hopefully people will feel more comfortable, getting help if they feel they need it, and seeking things out are getting the knowledge to ultimately end the stigma surrounding mental health, because I ultimately I just want us talking about it.
Mhm.
I want people to feel comfortable talking about the things that's on their brains, things that they're thinking about, things that are bothering them, and then hopefully that might lead them down a path towards talking to somebody like you, Chelsea, who have these tools that can help people, live a healthier, fulfilling life. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this. If you could give any last piece of advice to anybody that's listening right now that's on the fence about going to therapy, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say I know that that phone is 1,000 pounds. It's
Mhm.
really tough to pick up and make the call, but it just takes 5 seconds of courage. And if you're on the fence, go to therapy.
I love that.
um, because your own brain got you to where you are. You need to borrow someone else's for a little while.
You just gave me two new t-shirts. If you're on the fence, go to therapy. And what was the one about the brain?
Oh, your own brain got you to where you are, so borrow
No, the
someone
one
else.
about, but yeah, bar. I'm gonna have to play this back because those are two T-shirts. If I become a millionaire, I promise you, I will give you like 2% of any
Fine.
financial
I'll
things
take
that come in.
2% from the t-shirts. That's great.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Chelsea, thank you so much. If you want more information about Chelsea and how awesome she is, and you want to read more, you can visit her website, healthymindsandmore.com. I'll include that link in there as well. And hold up that book again, because we're gonna plug the shit out of this.
Okay.
We have Mental Health Helper, Kick Anxiety to the Curb. We'll have that Amazon link in the description as well. And also, if you want to see or listen to more interviews just like this one, I love talking with mental health professionals from all over the world. So all you have to do is go subscribe to my Patreon, or you can subscribe to my Instagram, or you can subscribe to my Facebook. Now I have Facebook subscriptions now, where you can subscribe for very low price, and you get access to all of those interviews and more, all the personal stuff that I put out there, just kind of being vulnerable with people and giving a sneak peek behind the scenes look at my life. So if you're interested in that, you can subscribe on Patreon, Facebook, or Instagram. It's all there. All the same stuff is there. So Chelsea, thank you again for hanging out with me today. I really do appreciate it. And everybody that's watching and listening, thank you. Thank you so much for your support. Your presence means more than you could ever know. As always, my friends, much love, good vibes, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.